Hey again. If you're into bread making, the best book I can find is Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast by Ken Forkish. It has everything you've ever wanted to know about bread making. He tells you all the details, but also keeps it really simple. If you're new to bread making, take his book and turn to page 98. It's white bread with a Polish. It's super easy, takes about 19 to 20 hours. It sounds like a lot, but you're really not doing much work during those 19 to 20 hours. So let's get started. You're gonna need a couple ingredients here. Of course, you're gonna need flour. We'll talk about that in a minute. You're gonna need some warm water. You're gonna need to be measuring some yeast here. You're gonna need salt later. Here's a probe for temperature gauging the water. All the measurements are by grams because cups are not accurate. Do it by grams. He'll explain that in the book. And you'll need some kind of container for the Polish and then for mixing the bread tomorrow. One of the last steps in baking the bread is using a Dutch oven in your oven. The key to the Dutch oven is it's got a lid which traps the steam inside, giving you the crusty outside. I've tried it without the Dutch oven in the main oven, using water pans and spray bottles for steam. It does not work as well. So find yourself a Dutch oven and work from that. So first, you're actually going to just make what's known as a Polish. So take your scale, start it up, make sure it's on grams, set whatever container you're going to use. You're going to need something with a lid or cover it with a towel or plastic wrap. Stick it on here, zero it out, and then put in some flour. Good enough, 501. Next, you're gonna need 0.4 grams of yeast. I use rapid rise yeast. I've been doing this for the last few months every weekend. This has worked great. My scale is not going to do that accurate of a weight measure. So the alternative is a 1/8 teaspoon. Now, of course, I don't have a 1/8 teaspoon, so just do half of a quarter. What you'll find later in these recipes is you do not need an entire packet. Like I said, it's 1/8 of a teaspoon. So what I do is I have a packet opened and in the refrigerator. That's about half. Put that back in the refrigerator. It'll hold for a while. And then next is 500 grams of water. I use a probe to make sure it's near 80 degrees, but what you're looking for is warm. So we've got 80-degree water, 81.3. That's great for tap water, accuracy-wise. Nothing particularly fancy, just pour it in. Don't go too fast, you'll go over the limit. I actually went over a tiny bit, but that's okay. Now there's nothing else to do here but get your hands dirty. I just use one for easier cleaning. It's going to be extremely wet. That's okay. It's actually going to grow about double in size, possibly even triple overnight. That's it. Now go wash your hands. Take what you've made, put a lid on it. Set it on the counter and you're done. Now, there's only 3 steps really. This is the first step and there's 2 more tomorrow. But when I said tomorrow, when do you know when to make this today? So essentially what you're going to do is make this. It's going to sit for 12 to 14 hours. You're going to then dump it into here with the rest of the flour and the salt and more yeast. It'll sit in here for 2 to 3 hours. You're then going to split this, proof it for an hour, then it's going to cook for 45 minutes. So you know it's 12 to 14 hours. It's really good to do an evening set like I'm doing here. So say 6 p.m. If you did this at 6 p.m., you could wake up at 8 a.m., dump it into here. It'll be ready to proof at 11, and you'll be baking it at noon. There's another one that I've also used that for those late risers is do this first step at 9 or 10 o'clock. You'll be dumping at 11 or noon. You'll then be separating and proofing at 2. cooking it at 3 or 4, and it'll be ready for dinner around 5 or 6. We're gonna stay here, and I'll be back in about 12 hours. It's now been 12 hours. Let's open this up and see what it looks like. What you see is a gloopy mess of bubbling. So you should see bubbling every couple of seconds. We're going to need a second container of some kind. Should be larger than that one because we're adding more flour. Oh, one other thing. This should smell kind of like a brewery. If you've ever done a tour of a whiskey brewery or a whiskey distillery or a brewery, it should have that yeasty smell to it. So take your second container, just like last time, and zero it out on the scale. We're going to need the 500 grams of flour again. So now's a good time to talk about the flour. Over the last several months, I've tried all-purpose flour, I've tried bread flour, I've used rice flour, a mix of all-purpose and rice flour. I've used whole wheat flour. I've used a mix of whole wheat and all-purpose flour. And frankly, the best has been just your generic all-purpose flour. The rice flour and the wheat flour added a nutty flavor to it, but it didn't rise as much. Now, I don't know if that's due to the flour or my inability to use it properly. Now that we have 500 grams of flour, we need to add our salt. It calls for 21 grams of salt. 21. Now it calls for 3 grams of yeast. Now again, I'm not confident that my scale can do that precise of a measurement at that small. So I'm just going to use a measuring spoon. The measuring equivalent is 3/4 of a teaspoon. 3/4 of a teaspoon. Now the question becomes, how do you put them together? So we do have to add water, so you might as well add the warm water to here, breaking it up some, cleaning out the basin, keeping it less sticky, and then pouring it in here. This time it needs to be 105 degrees. So we've got our water. 108, 109 and dropping, so close enough. And you're looking for 250 grams. Pour it around the edge. It's not that critical. I've done it a bunch of times. It doesn't seem to make a difference, but that's what the instructions say. $250. Take what you've just poured in here and pour it into the bigger vessel. The instructions say you can wet your hand and then mix this and it won't stick. That has never worked for me. No matter how wet I make my hand, I'm always getting sticky. I've done wetting, one mix, wetting, one mix, and it doesn't really matter. I'll show you. There's nothing you can do. Just mix it. So unlike the Poolish we made, this is not as wet. You can see wet portions and dry portions. That's okay, just leave it sit. Now go wash those nasty hands. So step 2 is done. Well, almost done. For the next hour, every 20 minutes, we're gonna mix this one more time. So 20 minutes, mix, 20 minutes, mix, 20 minutes, mix, and then leave it alone for the last 2 hours. Put a lid on it, and I'll be back to see you in 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes. Let's check it. About the same. Time to mix it again. If you want to, wet your hand. That's it. Let it sit for another 20 minutes. It's been another 20 minutes. Let's see what it looks like. About the same. Let it sit for another 20. 20 minutes again. Time to do our final fold. Let it sit for 2 hours. So it's been 2 hours since we did our last fold. Let me open this up and I'll show you what it looks like. Notice how it's grown substantially. I'll put a comparison shot right here. We have to flour the countertop and then dump it out. Flour your hands when you're working with this. You're gonna get sticky, but that's okay. It is a very wet dough. That's okay as well. At this point, I like to shape it just a little bit. Now, we need to cut this in half because it's too large for what we want to make. So dust a little bit down the middle. And then cut it with like a pie cutter or some other bladed instrument. You could use this, for example. At this point, you have to decide, are you going to make 2 loaves? Or you can do what I do, which is make 1 loaf, cut this in half again, and you have 2 pizza crusts. In another video, I'll show you how to make the pizza crust. For now, we're going to focus on the 1. Now you can just put this in a bowl and cover it with a towel for it to proof, or you can use a fancy one like this. I've used both. It really doesn't matter. If you're going to use this one, you got to flour it. Take the one you're going to use, tuck under the sides, and lay it in. It's going to be sticky, so don't forget to flour your hands. Now cover this with a towel and let it proof for about an hour. At this point, you've taken half and put it aside to proof for your loaf. At this point, cut this one in half. You now have 2 pizza crusts that are the size of a cookie sheet when you roll them out. The easiest thing to do is just take a bowl like this, shoot some Pam or other nonstick material inside, and then just put the dough in it. All this does is make sure that the bread doesn't stick, or the dough. Now cover this with plastic wrap, put it in the refrigerator, and you can use it up to 48 hours after. From this point forward, we're going to be working around an extremely hot oven and extremely hot metal. Be very, very careful. About 45 minutes before you want to bake, you want to preheat your oven to 475. And then put the Dutch oven in the oven to preheat with it. It's now been about an hour. It's time to take the Dutch oven out of the preheat. This pan is 475 degrees. Be very, very careful. Take the bread you have and gently transfer it into there. Don't touch the sides of the pan. Now cover and put it back. We're now going to let that cook for 30 minutes. It's now been 30 minutes, so take the top off. What you want to do is cause it to brown on the outside. That looks fantastic. Now put it back in just like this and let it go for another 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how crusty you like it. It's been roughly 10 minutes, so let's take it out and have a look. That's the brown I like. You might like it browner. The author of the book actually prefers it dark brown. I don't. But now let's tip it out so it can cool off. And that's it. You now have homemade bread.